Here we are.
Hummed Artemis.
The thick of the action.
Perusing through his filing cabinets, Artemis briefly looked over the many files that pertained to each student at Canterlot High. A lot of the students he got to know and care for had been on their best behavior, for the most part. There would be a few times where one student, or the occasional magical anomaly, would cause disruptions. For the most part, he and his sister were able to keep things orderly. Among the files, one stood out in particular. It dealt with Gilda, one of the rougher students in the school. Though she had decent enough grades and did well in gym class, her attitude and the disciplinary record was of some concern. Being among this year's graduating class, Artemis and the staff did their best to make sure she graduated on time.
She's been good as of late,
muttered Artemis.
Graduation's a month away. I hope she keeps it up.
Putting the folder away, he turned to the window as the early noon arrived. When not busy with paperwork or on a break, Artemis enjoyed the sight of a clear blue sky. It had something of a calming effect on him, a way to de-stress from the duties of a vice principal.
Beautiful. Just beautiful.
The door opened, and through it entered his older sister, Celestia. He always looked up to her when he needed help with anything. They shared a strong bond that eventually translated to their jobs, making a good team.
I agree,
said Celestia.
The skies are quite nice this time of year.
Same, but I'm partial to a good moonlit sky,
Artemis added. He got up from his seat to hug his sister.
What have you been up today, sis?
Well, since Chirelli is still on her honeymoon and I couldn't find a substitute, so I decided to teach her class,
sighed Celestia.
Makes me remember the old days of when I taught literature.
Well, the students like you and you're always dependable,
said Artemis.
But the same could be said of you,
said Celestia. For a moment they shared a slight giggle between them. Artemis, though the little brother, was just as mature as his older sister. But he could tell when she needed him for something.
So what is it you need, sis?
Artemis smirked.
I was thinking what the graduating seniors could do next Friday,
said Celestia.
One thing that would be fun is a water balloon fight behind the school. What do you think?
Water balloons?
Asked Artemis.
Don't you think that it'll leave a noticeable mess?
I told them they'll be able to do it as long as they clean up afterward,
answered Celestia.
If they miss a few, the groundskeeper will be able to take care of it.
Will they be getting a half day?
Asked Artemis.
They will,
answered Celestia. Artemis turned his gaze towards the window and smirked. He remembered the moments in his childhood where he and Celestia had water balloon fights of their own, always picking up after themselves. It was worthwhile to them.
Okay,
said Artemis.
I suppose it'll be good for the seniors to let loose a bit. It's your call.
Okay, water balloon fight it is.
Celestia agreed with a smile.
I know you can be a bit rigid in how you carry yourself at times, but I know you're quite the softie.
Artemis blushed at his sister's choice of words, but she was right. Growing up, he developed a hard exterior to ward off anyone that might give him a difficult time. Still, those that got to know him found him to be welcoming. He loved working with people for a living, and being in charge of a school fit well within his skills. He loved what he did for a living. One thing that he held above his work was his sister. For Artemis, Celestia was more than simply a sister to him. She was the best friend he was lucky to have. Whenever he needed someone to talk to, Celestia would drop whatever she was doing and hear him out without exceptions or judgment.
Brother, are you all right?
Asked Celestia.
Yeah, I guess,
answered Artemis.
I've just been thinking about a lot of things lately.
Oh, like what?
Asked Celestia with a hint of concern.
With the end of another school year coming up,
Artemis sighed.
I've thought about how far we came. Years ago when we left school behind, I never thought we'd come back to be the principals here.
We put our minds and will to our goals to make them a reality,
said Celestia as she placed a hand on her brother's shoulder.
If anything, you're the hardest worker I know.
Well, I did have a sister who always had my back.
Artemis smiled, turning his attention to his sister.
Tia, you were there for me when I needed someone during my rough patch. You were the first to understand what I felt, and I still remember the hug you gave me that day. There, I knew everything would be all right.
Compelled by the emotions from his memories, Artemis quickly pulled his sister in for a hug. Nothing but pure silence traveled the air. All that mattered was a moment of contemplation between siblings.
I know this sounds pretty corny, but you're the best big sister out there.
Artemis broke the hug.
Tia, thank you for everything.
Celestia gave her brother a short look before she flashed a smile his way. Artemis returned it with one of his own before he sat down in his desk. With a nod, Celestia turned to the door and opened it. She sighed with contentment before walking through it.
You're very welcome, brother.
Said Celestia.
We have that dinner tonight after work. Does the place on the corner of Bastion and Arcadia sound good?
Huh. I haven't tried that place yet.
Answered Artemis.
Sure, that sounds good. Okay, I don't want to keep you held up. I'll catch you after work. See you later.
Likewise.
Said Celestia. Seeing Celestia close the door behind her, Artemis turned his attention to some paperwork. Pulling out a pen, he gave his work his undivided attention. Still, he couldn't get his earlier thoughts out of his head. There was much he overcame years ago, and as he looked back on it, he realized how fortunate he was to receive the support he got from friends and family. In his mind, they were like an invaluable treasure.
Tia,
Sighed Artemis.
you truly are one in a million.
Hours had passed, and the last round of classes was soon to end. Keeping track of the time, Artemis took his time finishing up the daily reports and other paperwork that came by his desk. To some, such a workload would tire one out, but for him, it was something he was more than used to, as it was quiet work. With the sound of knocking on the door, the silence had been broken, pulling Artemis from his work. Through the window, he could tell it wasn't any faculty member he recognized, but a student. Rarely did students come to visit him at his office for any reason, as they would usually go to his sister for help. Still, he welcomed any visitors.
Come in,
Said Artemis. The door opened and revealed a student he recognized. Black hoodie, light blue jeans, navy blue skin, and sun-orange hair in a ponytail. It was Nebula Spectacle, head of the school's poetry club. The way she dressed was a mix of both masculine and feminine features, an expression of herself. While usually slightly extroverted, Artemis noticed her becoming more aloof and closed off.
Nebula?
Nervous, said Artemis as his face drew a smile. To the
Come
office
in,
and closed the
make
door
yourself
behind
comfortable.
her. She then sat on a couch in front of the desk with her eyes fixed to her sneakers. Artemis was concerned but retained his smile for reassurance.
Miss Spectacle, how are you today?
Said Artemis.
I'm fine, I guess.
Answered Nebula in a quiet tone.
It is close to graduation for me, and I'm very nervous.
It's nothing to be choked up about.
Said Artemis.
It's just another chapter in life, a journey we all must take. You've done well this year, and you should feel proud.
It's that a lot of things are changing.
Reassured Artemis.
Change is the only constant in life. While it may be intimidating, it's nothing to be scared about. I know you'll do well out there. You have a good future ahead of you.
Looking at the jaded student, Artemis noticed her mood didn't improve one iota. She even averted her gaze from him. He saw expressions of that sort many times before and knew it to be a sign of another problem, one of great distress. Artemis knew just a simple chat about what the future had in store wasn't the sole reason Nebula came to him.
Miss Spectacle,
said Artemis as he straightened his tie.
I think that just a simple conversation wasn't the reason you came here. I know you think I'm all strict and intimidating, but I'd be more than willing to listen to you about whatever you have on your mind.
Nebula flinched, and her eyes shot open. Since she could remember living with her mother, she had a sort of feeling that ate away at her over the years, a feeling that something wasn't right about her. Every time she looked in a mirror only worsened those thoughts. She was afraid to speak her innermost thoughts for the fear of harsh judgment.
I can't.
Muttered Nebula in a distressed tone.
Nebula,
Artemis sat down next to the troubled student.
I know you're afraid to speak about what's troubling you. You think that I'll judge you harshly, but as the vice principal, that's something I'll never do. Rest assured, whatever you want to discuss, none of it will leave this room. You have my word.
Part of Nebula was resistant to say anything to Artemis, despite his promise and reassuring tone, yet the other part felt it was safe. Having spent years being fearful of the perceived hate, she had enough. She badly wanted to let it all out.
Since middle school,
Nebula sighed.
I felt like I was stuck in the wrong body. Every day it felt all wrong. Whenever I look in the mirror, I see something that doesn't match who I feel like inside. There are times where it kept me up at night. I hate feeling like this. I do.
Though it surprised him, Artemis knew of the issue that affected Nebula. He knew friends who were on nearly the same boat as she was. Though he heard stories from his friends about their journeys, in a way, it hit close to home for him.
Well, I feel proud of you for that.
Said Artemis with a warm smile.
It takes a bit of courage to come out like that, and it's nothing to feel ashamed about. You should be proud to be who you are. Why were you afraid of that?
Nebula didn't respond, only with frightened shuddering and a worried shuddering. It didn't take much for Artemis to know what it meant. The uncertainty of the reactions from her friends and family ate away at her.
Nebula,
said Artemis.
I know you're afraid to tell those close to you, and it's understandable. Fear of the unknown is common for people like you. Your mother, friends. I have a feeling they would be understanding if you tell them with honesty and clarity.
But what if you're wrong?
Yelled Nebula.
If I told them I'm a boy and why, would they still accept me or treat me like trash? My mom might kick me out, my friends brush me aside, and Argento leaves me. I just don't know what to do other than keeping it in for all my sake.
For your sake?
Asked Artemis.
What's worse to you? Telling your friends or living in fear?
Then what? Huh?
Nebula yelled again.
You don't know what I'm going through. To me, you're just another stranger. How would you know how I feel?
Artemis understood Nebula's frustration, but hearing that he didn't shook him. He remembered years ago when faced with a similar circumstance, the fear of coming out to those he loved and the rejection that would have ensued. In Nebula, he saw a bit of himself and fully understood. With a sigh, Artemis got up and walked to his desk. He pulled out 2 pictures and fondly looked at them for a while. As he returned to the couch, he handed them off to Nebula without another word. Unsure of what to think, Nebula took the pictures and gave them a look. What she saw surprised her. The first picture she saw struck her as odd. One figure she recognized almost immediately was Celestia. She was hugging someone who looked like Artemis, clad in a cap and gown. However, the figure was a girl. All the gears and motors in her mind went into overdrive in confusion.
Nebula,
Artemis sighed.
Contrary to what you've said, I do know what you're going through. I've been down the same path as you're on when I started questioning that part of myself. All the fears and anxiety, it was all familiar to me. Even after all those years, I still remember it.
Mr. Artemis,
Gasped Nebula as she put 2 and 2 together.
you're...
Yes, Nebula.
Artemis finished.
Long ago, I was once a woman that went by the name of Luna. Much like you, I felt that what I looked like on the outside didn't reflect what I felt on the inside. It ate away at me until a month before I graduated from high school, and I told my sister.
My God.
Gasped Nebula.
I had no idea that you were... I'm sorry.
I know you didn't mean it.
Reassured Artemis.
I was prepared to show you those pictures anyway, as I didn't want you to think you're alone.
Still reeling from the revelation, Nebula took a look at the next picture. Like the first one, Artemis was in a cap and gown, but it was black instead of blue. Also, much like he was now, he was male. He posed with his sister with warm smiles on their faces, but Artemis's expression was one of triumph in more ways than one.
By the time I was close to graduating from college, I had completed my transition.
Artemis commented.
Part of me was scared when I set out on my journey, but deep down, it was something I knew I wanted.
How did your family react?
Asked Nebula.
My sister was the first person I came out to.
Artemis sighed.
To my surprise, she gave me the tightest hug that I still remember to this day. A month after I left high school, I couldn't keep it from my parents. When I told them, I thought I was going to get shown the door, but I felt their hands grip mine. Then my father said something that I'll never forget.
What did he say?
Asked Nebula.
That no matter which path I walk in life, he and my mother would always support me.
Artemis noticed that Nebula was still pensive.
Is there something wrong?
Even if my friends and family accept me, will they still see me as the Nebula they know?
It was a question Artemis wagered on when he desired to come out. He couldn't count the many times he asked himself that during his high school years. However, when he took a camping trip in his senior year, he thought of an analogy that fit.
Mind if I tell you something?
Asked Artemis.
Think of this as how a caterpillar becomes a butterfly. As a caterpillar grows, it desires to change the way it looks and wraps itself inside a cocoon. For weeks, it drastically changes itself until it emerges as a butterfly, flying proud and free. Still, inside, it's the same caterpillar that has adapted to its new form. Even if you do go through with transitioning, others will still remember who you are inside.
Nebula, while still unsure, pondered the vice principal's words. She wanted to come out, and for all of what Artemis said to be true. But the severity of her anxiety had been lessened by a renewed sense of optimism. All that was left for her was to tell those close to her, ready to endure any potential rejection.
Mr. Artemis,
Sighed Nebula.
thank you. I'm just sick of hiding who I truly am. I want to tell everyone I love, even my boyfriend, Argento. But what if I tell my mother and she hates me?
Nebula.
Artemis smiled.
I've gotten to know your mother through the meetings I've had with her, and she's a very caring person. If anything, she would be the first to completely understand your issue. And Argento, I know you two are very close. Sometimes you need a leap of faith, even if it's for your own sake. If something happens to you at home, my sister and I will take care of you. I promise.
I don't know what to say.
Said Nebula with a growing smile.
Thank you, Artemis.
You're welcome, Nebula. I'm looking out for you, that's all.
Reaching into his coat pocket, Artemis pulled out a notepad and pen. He wrote on it before he handed the paper off to Nebula.
Here's mine and my sister's address. If something happens, you come here, and we'll give you a place to stay.
Artemis,
Nebula lunged forward and hugged Artemis.
thank you.
It's no problem.
Artemis briefly returned the hug.
The important thing is to come out at whatever pace is most comfortable to you. If you want to tell your boyfriend, I think he's still in the auditorium getting the set pieces ready for the upcoming play. If you hurry, you might catch him.
I hope he'll understand.
I'm positive he will.
Added Artemis.
Regardless of what happens, remember that someone will always have your back. Don't hesitate to come to me if things turn sour.
Flashing a brighter smile, Nebula nodded with Artemis as she walked out of the office. With a sigh, Artemis sat back in his chair, turning toward the afternoon sky. Satisfied that he was able to help a student that went through a similar hurdle he once did, he was able to enjoy a moment of peace. Though he didn't know what'll happen next with Nebula, he hoped it'll all work out for her.
Hey, Artemis!
Celestia called out as she entered her office. Artemis turned to face her.
How are things going? You seem to be in a pretty good mood.
Well, the head of the poetry club, Nebula Spectacles, stopped by a bit ago.
Artemis explained.
Oh, really?
Said Celestia.
She was going through some of the same hurdles I went through years ago.
Answered Artemis.
I showed her those photos I had.
I see.
Mused Celestia.
I hope she's doing all right. With how stressful it was for you, I can imagine how it must be for her. Plus, I thought you got rid of that picture.
Well, I thought about it, but I want to be reminded of your support.
Artemis got up from his seat.
Also, I told Nebula if things go bad at home, she should come to our house. Are you all right with that?
Of course!
Celestia answered.
It's not a huge problem. I hope coming out to her mother goes well for her. It reminds me of how it happened to you.
Yeah, but I had a good sister that had my back.
Artemis pulled Celestia into a hug.
If it wasn't for you, I would have still been languishing in that closet. I thank you for the love you've shown me.
Artemis, when you were born, I promised that I would love you no matter what.
Celestia smiled, returning the hug.
It doesn't matter who you are. I'll always care for my little brother.
As Artemis broke the hug, his eyes began to water from the surge of joy. The look in his sister's eyes reminded him of the day he opened up to her about his identity. He never forgot that smile, and it was a comforting memory in times of stress. It kept him going.
Sister, you'll always be my best friend,
said Artemis as he wiped the tears from his eyes.
I truly mean that.
I know, little brother.
Said Celestia.
I know.
Then the bell rang, and soon the halls were packed with students, all eager to leave and enjoy the weekend. Artemis and Celestia still had a bit of work to do before they could call it a day, but they didn't mind. It let them a bit of time to reminisce and remember their early years. Yet Artemis couldn't dwell on the past. His concern was for the welfare of Nebula.
I wish you luck, Nebula. A lot of good choices.
Artemis scanned through the clothing section of the store, eyeing the many items put on sale. Apart from the need for groceries, he wanted new clothes as well. He always wanted to keep his wardrobe fresh and ever-changing. But there was one piece of clothing that he coveted the most. His eyes drifted to a brown leather jacket with stripes going down the sleeves. To his eyes, it was the must-have for his wardrobe. As he stroked his beard, admiring his prize, he saw the price tag, and it made him sigh in defeat. As much as he wanted it, it was expensive enough for him to avert his eyes. Just as he was about to leave the clothes area, his phone began to buzz. Reaching into his pocket, he saw the call was from his wife, Vanilla Bean. He cracked a smile and sighed as he answered it.
Hello.
Answered Artemis.
Hiya, honey.
Said Vanilla.
How's the shopping coming along?
It's going great, dear.
Answered Artemis with a smile.
Got the makings for dinner tonight. Tia's husband is gonna get a kick out of my pad thai recipe.
I bet.
Mused Vanilla.
Orion has that adventurous palette going for him. Where are you now?
I'm currently looking through the clothing section.
Answered Artemis.
Just window shopping.
Looking at a leather jacket again?
Asked Vanilla to her husband's shocked amusement.
Yeah.
Artemis smirked.
I'm looking at a nice one here, but the price tag is putting me off from it.
Honey, I know you like to be conservative with the money.
Said Vanilla.
I get that you want to put me into consideration, but you deserve a little
dear.
something nice
It's
once in a
just
while.
that...
Honey, it's okay.
Vanilla interrupted.
Buy the jacket. You deserve it. You did get that pay raise last year. Just don't worry about it.
Artemis sighed and smiled at his wife's words. She had a point, and part of him wanted the jacket. In the end, he decided it was going to be his one luxury for the month. He grabbed the coat by the hanger and smiled.
Okay, very well.
Artemis agreed.
I think you'll love the look of this, dear.
Well, I can't wait to see you in it when you get back.
Vanilla giggled.
Anyway, I'll let you go, honey. Talk to you later. Love you.
Love you too, dear.
Sighed Artemis.
Bye-bye.
Artemis hung up the call and pocketed his phone, sighing blissfully. Deftly, he threw it into the cart and nodded with satisfaction. He often put the consideration of his wife before his material desires. Though flattered, Vanilla wished for him to ease up and enjoy himself.
Hey, Artemis!
Just as he was about to leave the clothing aisle, Artemis's ears twitched from hearing his name. The voice sounded masculine and distinct with a hint of familiarity. As he turned around, he caught the sight of two figures approaching him. Both were young men in their early 20s. One had pale orange skin and silver hair in a buzz cut. He wore jeans and a denim jacket with a red t-shirt. The second one, navy blue skinned, and long orange hair.
Hello.
Said
I
Artemis
do
as the pair got
apologize if
closer.
I come off as rude, but do I remember you two?
Well, I do remember you.
Said the orange-haired man.
You were our principal back in high school 5 years ago.
The gears in Artemis's head started to turn. Almost immediately he recalled who they both were. It was strange for him to see them growing up, but he was thrilled to see two of his former students after so long.
Nebula? Argento?
Gasped Artemis as he reached forward for a round of hugs.
Oh my, it's so good to see you both. How have you both been?
It's been going good, Artemis.
Answered Argento.
Well, Canterlot is a bit small for a city.
Answered Artemis as he turned his attention to Nebula. The last time he saw him, he expressed his desire to transition, and seeing that fulfilled told him that things turned out okay.
I see things turned out well for you, Nebula. I'm very happy that they did.
Thank you, Artemis.
Said Nebula with a smile.
But my name's no longer Nebula.
Really?
Asked Artemis with slight surprise.
What's your new name?
Quasar Burst.
Answered Quasar.
I just like the sound of it.
I do believe it's fitting for you.
Artemis added.
So, how are things going for you two?
Other than we're living together, things have been going well.
Answered Argento.
I've been working as a vet at the city zoo. It's honest work and I love helping animals.
I've been working at the local observatory since I graduated from college.
Added Quasar.
One of my colleagues discovered a comet about a week ago. Now, we're racing to find, I don't know, maybe a planet? It's all exciting work.
I see. Looks like life has been good for both of you so far, and I'm glad.
Artemis smiled and nodded.
So, Quasar, pardon me if it seems like I'm asking too many questions, but how did your coming out go?
It's not a big issue, Artemis. You're good.
Answered Quasar.
Long story short, I told Argento first, and funnily enough, he told me he was bi. I didn't expect it, but we both accepted one another. When I told my mom, she gave me a big hug that I can still feel to this day.
You have a supportive mother, Quasar. Never forget that.
Artemis noticed Quasar and Argento smiling brightly, more than he was familiar with. He knew something was on their minds.
So, you two seem very happy today. What's the occasion?
Quasar and Argento turned to one another and giggled with brighter smiles. With a brief kiss, they locked hands and turned back to their former vice principal. When he glanced at Quasar's hands, his eyes lit up brightly.
At Christmas last year, Argento gave me a ring.
Answered Quasar.
But when I saw him get down on one knee, it made the present even better.
My gosh.
Artemis shook their hands.
Congratulations, you two.
Said Argento.
Thank you, sir. It just got to where we loved each other to the point that being merely boyfriend and boyfriend just wouldn't be enough. I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with this adorable nerd.
Argento.
Moaned Quasar in a playful tone.
You must have a long list of nicknames for me.
What can I say?
Laughed Argento.
I love to tease my fiancé.
As he shared a laugh with his fiancée and Artemis, Quasar was locked in thought. After many years, he saw the one who pulled him out of his deepest slump. There was much he wanted to say, but he felt it was a personal matter.
Hey, Argento.
Said Quasar.
Can you go finish shopping? I need to have a word with Artemis.
Okay, dear.
Argento pecked Quasar on his lips.
I'll go hit the produce first. I'll see you when you're done.
Quasar waved at Argento as he walked off toward the cart storage. Once he was out of sight, Quasar turned to Artemis with a thoughtful expression. He knew what he wanted to say, but felt that his tongue was in a knot. Breathing deep, he gathered his thoughts.
What's on your mind, Quasar?
Asked Artemis.
I remember that face. You must be thinking of something.
Artemis.
Said Quasar.
It's been years since I last saw you. Not a day goes by where I didn't thank you for helping me that day.
I was your principal, Quasar.
Artemis smiled.
It was my job to help you.
I know.
Quasar nervously smiled.
But you went through all that for me, willing to bring me in if things went wrong. To me, that wasn't just you upholding your duties as the vice principal.
Well, a lot of what you were going through reminded me of myself.
Sighed Artemis.
I just knew how to help you. But I wanted you to know that you shouldn't feel ashamed for being who you are.
I know.
Quasar nodded.
Now, I feel prouder than ever. I have a job, a supporting mother, and I'm soon to be married. Most of all, I can be myself without fear. I don't know how else to thank you, but this.
Reaching into his hoodie, Quasar pulled out 2 envelopes with Artemis and Celestia's names on them. Artemis didn't even need to guess what the envelopes contained. Surprised, he slowly smiled.
Quasar?
Said Artemis with a shudder.
Why?
Because after you helped me, I see you as a great friend.
Answered Quasar.
I wanted to repay you and Celestia for what you both have done for me. I would be honored if you and your sister attend my wedding in a couple of months.
Artemis smiled.
I'm not sure we'll be able to, but I hope Tia and I can.
With a tear rolling down his cheek, Quasar lunged forward and gave Artemis a warm hug. Nothing was said, not even a hint of a whisper as they shared their emotions. At that moment, Quasar remembered the day at CHS from years ago.
Artemis!
Quasar shuddered as they broke the hug.
Thank you so much.
I was glad to help you out.
Artemis returned to grab his cart.
So, where are you and Argento headed after this?
My dad's grave.
Said Quasar with a somber tone.
I wonder if he would accept me if he were still alive.
I can't really say for sure.
Artemis twiddled his beard.
But if I had to guess, I'm sure he would.
I hope so.
Said Quasar as he began to back up.
Anywho, I gotta go help my fiancée. We're still deciding on dinner. It's been nice catching up with you, sir. Bye!
See you later, Quasar.
With a smile, Artemis left the clothing aisle and to the checkout. All the while, thoughts from earlier still drifted in his head. To him, all he did that day was help a student in distress, and would have gone to great lengths if need be. Though he did anticipate the gratitude from him, he didn't expect it to the degree of being called a friend of his. He didn't know how to feel about it. With his stuff in tow, he walked back to his car and loaded his items, humming the sounds of his ringtone. Once he got in, Artemis felt the envelopes in his pocket. Pulling one out with his name on it, curiosity got the better of him as he opened it. However, he didn't expect what was written alongside the invitation.
I can hardly believe it's been years since high school, and I hope you and your sister are well. I still fondly remember that day when I came to you for help. At first, I was scared to reveal I was struggling with my dysphoria. To hear you were trans as well helped pull me from the depths. You helped me tap into some of that personal pride that I needed, and I can't thank you enough. Because of you, I've been living my life unfettered by strife. It is with my hope that you'll attend my wedding in 2 months. You've earned this honor because to me, you are and shall always be one of my greatest friends. Quasar burst.